Thank you. Please be seated. Prefect joke of the day is, why aren't koalas actual bears? They don't meet the qualifications.
Good morning. Thanks, Barbara. Qualifications, very good. So it's a big day if you have any Welsh roots or Welsh heritage, and you'll hear about that in just a second. But just before that, a little information announcement from Demir and Hallie, I think it is. Is that right? Hallie, here you go. Demir is coming.
Morning. Okay, good morning. My name is Demir, and I have boldly spoken in chapel this year, reflecting upon one of the Model UN conferences. Now is the time of the year when Shawnigan can show itself in this area too. Individual students representing a school usually host these Model UN conferences. For several years, our school has been hosting these conferences. This year's conference, however, is promising bigger numbers and higher level of organization as we're hosting twice as many students in downtown Victoria. When I first joined Model UN, I signed up for a conference straight away, just to know what everything is about. I was not expecting much, to be honest, although shortly after the conference, I wanted to do it again and again. Signing up for Shaman is the only useful shortcut possible. By signing up, you promise yourself a fantastic weekend in downtown Victoria, possibly with your friends, good feelings from how good you look, grouping debates, and a chance to meet new people. I'm sure some of you will even get a chance to go out and have fun with them. It can be a friendly dinner or maybe a date. There's only one aspect that may throw some people under the bus. It is the preparation for the conference. As an understanding high school student, I can tell you from my experience that it's not that bad. Although if you want to give a good competition, which we are highly encouraging, extra research and more effort will need to be put in. Nothing is more delightful though than coming back to school after a long, hard, but very exciting and thoughtful weekend and feel like it was the best weekend of your life. As well, you will never forget the great dinners and trips with Mr. Klassen and Ms. Carballo. On behalf of this year's Shaman Secretariat, I would like to ask everyone who is interested in having an inspiring weekend to join Shaman this year and give it a shot. For those of you who are still not sure, come talk to me and Hallie and we'll give you more details, we'll explain you everything, and then you will come with us. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hallie Campbell, and I know it's Thursday, but bear with me. Raise your hand if you come from a country outside of Canada. Yeah. Raise your hand if you follow a news source on any platform. This can include social media. All right. And raise your hand if you like to argue with people. Yeah. I know there's some liars out there. Everybody does. This year, I have the extraordinary honor of serving as the Secretary General for Shaman 2018. Shaman is the annual conference we, the Model United Nations Club, have been organizing for, I think, 9 years now. This conference hosts roughly 300 delegates from schools as far away as New York and as close as right here at Shawnigan. Delegates can select from 8 different committees, each of which with different topics, in which they will play a country or individual and debate various issues. Our committees include a House of Commons to be held in the actual BC legislature, a UNESCO committee centered around artificial intelligence, a crisis set in the novel 1984, and even a committee based on the TV show Stranger Things. While I recognize most of you may not think of yourself as a MUN person or even think of MUN at all, there's truly something for everyone. This is an amazing opportunity to meet new people, spend time with friends, stay downtown, and skip a day of school. It looks amazing on college transcripts and is genuinely one of the most rewarding experiences you can have as a teenager. So please go online to shaman.com and register today. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact Mr. Klassen, Demir, myself, or any other student in the fine art. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Well done, you two. And I just want to give an absolute endorsement to that. So let's see if we can get the right response to that. We're very proud of our Model UN program, and the fact that we're able to, it's of a level that we can take it on the road as such down to Victoria and do what they're doing is really something. So there you heard the appeal. Let's have the response to that appeal, please. Really very worthwhile. So now we're going to switch gears, and this is always a special day for me because it's St. David's Day, but it's even more special for Mr. Samuel and Mrs. Samuel. So Mr. Samuel?
Thank you. Yes, good morning. I'm glad I'm up here, actually, because Mrs. Samuel has just been nudging me to don't say this, don't say that, so there's a bit of pressure off. But anyway, happy St. David's Day to you all. Today is March the 1st, and it's a day of celebration for us Welsh folks. It is celebrated not only in Wales, but all over the world by people of Welsh origin. I can't believe, actually, a year's gone by since I spoke to you last. Unlike Demir, I've spoken up here a few times. I think I've been at school 25 years, and I think I've spoken on every St. David's Day, or when it falls on a Thursday or close to a Thursday. You might remember, some of you might remember, I spoke last year about the village with a very long name. Can anyone remember the name of the village? Come on, a prize to Subway or whatever. Any volunteers? Well, of course you remember. Llanfair Pwll Gwyngyll Gogerwch Wyndrobwll Llantas Silio Gogagwch. Does that come back to you now? Anyway, very, very briefly then, St. David, of course, is the patron saint of Wales, and like all saints, they built churches and spread Christianity throughout the country. St. Patrick, this might be news to some of you, was Welsh too, but he was a very good swimmer and managed to swim across the Irish Sea to open a few churches in Ireland. There are many stories about St. David's, and one of his saying that I remember was to be joyful and tend to the little things. We've heard the Reverend Holland say that many a time. What I enjoyed most, though, about the day in Wales was that it was we'd have the afternoon off school, and there would be no lessons at all in the morning. Students would bring in their leeks and their daffodils. The leek is the national emblem. As you see, I've put a few on the cross there. And my wife has the daffodil, which is the flower of Wales. And Mrs. Grass, fair play to her, bless her, every year she comes and brings me a bag of leeks from the garden and daffodils, because later on we'll go back and cook those leeks and make a nice little soup. But I'll tell you about that shortly. Students then would come to school that morning and they'd bring their leeks and daffodils from the gardens to decorate the hall, and then we'd have what was called an Eisteddfod, which was a cultural gathering of singing, dancing, and reciting. We would finish the morning by eating some of this cawl, as it's called, or a Welsh soup, made of leeks and potatoes and lamb, followed by some sweet little cakes called Welsh cakes. Then it was off home for the afternoon to play. So anyway, we'll start this morning's service by singing a good Welsh hymn. We'll turn to number 12, which is Guide Me, O Thy Great Jehovah, which, as you know, is a popular hymn in school here, but is also very popular with us in Wales, where they sing it at rugby stadiums and soccer stadiums throughout. So, Guide Me, please, number 12. seated. That was a bit flat, I thought. It got slightly better towards the end, but we've got another good Welsh hymn at the end, so hopefully we'll sing that one a little bit better. But so, our learned friend, the Reverend Holland, asked me to say a few words this week as he is away at a church conference. He gives me and so many others inspiration on a weekly basis that I'm only too happy to help. I asked him if there was any particular topic that he would like me to talk on, and he said, "Speak about nothing," he says. So here I am, going to try to inspire you by saying a few things about nothing. When you leave here this morning, people might ask you what was said in chapel. They will look at you strangely when your answer is nothing. Mrs. Samuel and myself are from neighbouring coal mining villages about 2 miles apart in south-west Wales. It was a close, happy community where Welsh was the spoken language. People had little in the way of material belongings, but they worked hard for a living, and as in almost all cases where there's hardship, faith was at the core of the existence. The chapel was a place of inspiration, a place of spiritual guidance. It was also the focal point of recreation and learning. More importantly, in my mind at the time when I was a young lad, the minister was the manager and coach of the soccer and cricket team. He also was the producer and director of the annual drama production. In chapel, we had to read, we had to sing, we had to recite, and ahead in front of a congregation as well, which was quite nerve-wracking when you were a small young boy. Today, though, there were about 6 chapels in the village, and the village wasn't that big. But today, unfortunately, the coal is gone. There's no coal left, and the unemployment is high, and the chapels are almost all gone. In fact, there's only one chapel still remaining, which is sad. I'll take you back to when I was about 17, which is about 20 years ago, when I was still at high school, when I was your age. One particular Sunday evening, our family went to listen to a visiting preacher give a sermon. We sat in our pews waiting for his arrival, but after a delay of around about 20 minutes, our minister walked in and said that the visiting minister had been taken ill and could not make it. Good, I thought to myself. Time to head home and watch another episode of Star Trek on TV. No PVRs then, okay? My excitement was short-lived when he said, "I have nothing to say," and then proceeded to speak for about an hour and a half on nothing. I promise I won't keep you here for that long, but I will share some things that have stuck with me from that sermon. The quote from Bill Bryson's bestseller called The Short History of Nearly Everything. In the first paragraph, the last sentence goes like this: "And so from nothing came the universe." Actually, all the scriptures say before creation, there was nothing. There was a time when people thought that the earth was flat, that it was held up by an elephant, and the elephant stood on a giant turtle, but there was nothing underneath the turtle. Isn't it bizarre, and you've all done science here, that all of matter, i.e., you, the tree out there, the wood in here, everything, look around you, the air you breathe, is made up of these particles, or atoms as we call them, all right? And yet again, the vast majority of a single atom is nothing. In my teaching career, which spans, close to 40 years, hard to believe, isn't it? I can recall many nothing answers from teachers. "What are you doing?" I'd say. "Nothing." It's quite a common answer. "What do you do over the leave weekend?" "Oh, nothing much." "Did you enjoy your spring break?" "Not really, I did nothing much, I often wonder, though, is it because they can't be bothered to tell me? I was always a bit weary of seeing students rush to the back of the class, or when they jump on a bus and rush to the back of the bus, because I'd shout, "What are you up to back there?" I would shout, and guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, the answer is nothing. When our 2 boys were growing up in Ripley's, by the way, the Ripley's lads here, I ran Ripley's for 17 years. I was the housemaster there. And both my sons grew up there. So there was a toy room upstairs in that passageway that goes from the residence into the house director's house. And there was a toy room that we set up for the boys. And my wife and I would be downstairs. And if it was quiet for a long period of time, we'd shout upstairs and say, "What are you guys up to?" If the answer was nothing, it was a sure sign to go up and check. A true story, this next one. In Ripley's, one particular Friday night, back in the 90s, it was, early 90s, something like 94, 95, before the days of the Stag and the Ritz, I was on duty. Just after prep, the outside area between Lakes and Ripley's was very quiet, and within the house it was unusually calm. Then the phone rang in my office, and it was Mr. Austin, who, by the way, at that time, ran a boys' house. All the grade 8s were in a single house, up by where Renfrew South was, where Coach Cooper lives, all right? And he tells me that there was a radio station on campus, and that his young students were tuning into it. He believed it was originating from Ripley's. Ripley's house, I thought to myself, never. Double Blue can do. I put the phone down and went on the prowl. I could hear a pin drop in the house. I went on the first and second floor. There was no one in the common room. Then I heard some voices on the third floor. So I walked down towards the end of the corridor where the noises were, and there were some boys there who scattered pretty quickly. So I stormed into this room, and there must have been about 15 boys in the room, all right, the room where I sensed there was some activity. Well, as I walked in, I jostled my way through the room and, past several boys. "What's going on here, boys?" I remember the word nothing came as an answer several times. A grade 12 lad named Bruce McCaskill was a radio ham enthusiast and had set up this complicated piece of equipment up on his desk. He'd got wires out of the window and on the roof where he'd attached a 10-foot antenna of some sort. He was, of course, tuning in illegally to a particular wavelength used by the local RCMP and emergency services, and had created what was called at the time Radio Ripley's. The students on campus were in their rooms. This is all over campus. They were in their rooms listening to the radio, and girls and boys would request over the payphone to Ripley's. The request would be relayed by a boy to Bruce, who would play the requested tune on the radio. This had been going on for about a month under my nose. The students were having a great fun, but unfortunately it had to stop. I was told I was a real handful when I was about 3 to 4 years old. My grandparents lived about 500 meters away and would often come down to take me out for a few hours to give my mother a break so she could spend some time with my sister. One particular day, my grandmother took me grocery shopping to a nearby town which was about 7 miles away. It was very exciting for me, as I would get to ride on the bus and sit by the window, because at that time the family didn't have a car, and there weren't many cars in the area anyway. The bus would stop every 300 meters to pick up people en route, and it would take about 40 minutes to get to our destination. Upon arrival, she would get hold of my hand and we'd walk around the streets, we'd do a bit of window shopping, we'd talk to people, we'd go and have some tea or some pop in my case. We'd call in with a baker, we'd call in with a butcher, we'd get some fruit and veg, and it was all very, very exciting. I noticed in a nearby toy shop, I noticed a drum in the window, and I told my grandmother I liked it. She said, "Well, if you're a good boy, I might buy it for you." Of course, I made sure I was a good boy, and hence got the drum. The journey home on the bus was the longest 40 minutes of my grandmother's life. She told us in her latter years. Apparently, I was walking up and down the aisle of the crowded bus, banging the drum and singing to my heart's content. The passengers were very annoyed, and they were giving my grandmother some awful looks. She did her best to stop me as the sweat was running down her brow. She could not wait to get off the bus, I think we got off the bus about a mile before our destination, so we had to walk home. Where am I going with this, you might ask? Well, after a few months of banging the drum, a hole appeared, and temptation caused me to put my finger in the hole, and of course the hole got bigger. And to my disappointment, there was nothing inside. So this nothing can actually make a noise as well. Nothing comes up in conversation quite often, and I'm sure you've got many examples yourself. Mr. Robertson, I remember, at the famous Colts practices, he would often quote, "You'll get nothing from nothing." Which means, of course, if you put nothing into training, you'll get nothing out. And the same is true, of course, in everything we do in life. You've heard Mrs. Milne say that a few times as well with your effort ratings. Back to rugby. It was a great game I grew up with. In fact, we didn't have any choice. It was rugby, soccer, or a bit of cricket in the summer. A nothing kick is one where your team gains no advantage from the kick that your teammate has just made. A famous English goal kicker once said in his book, "If you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it." Which means, of course, set goals in your life, otherwise you'll just aimlessly move along. Many of you have been in situations where you've been kind, you've helped a friend, or you've carried out a good deed. You may have asked by your recipient of the good deed, "How much do I owe you?" More often than not, if you're a kind, caring, and sharing person, the answer is nothing. You owe me nothing. It was a big move for me to come to Canada, a really big move. Tight family in Wales. And I remember my parents drove me up to Heathrow Airport in London. Well, and I remember vividly saying goodbye to my mother. A mother who had devoted a big chunk of her life to bringing the four of us up, changing nappies, no disposable diapers then, washing them, hoping for a windy day so they dry, washing us, feeding us, caring for us, teaching for us, the list goes on. "What do I owe you, Mum?" I asked her at the airport. With a tear in the eye, she said, "Nothing." If I were to live forever, I would never be able to repay that nothing. I will leave you now with this thought. Unfortunately, none of us will be around forever. And when our time is up, make sure when you stand at the pearly gates and when you're asked the big question, what did you do with your life down on earth? Make sure that your answer is not nothing. There we go. We'll So, we'll finish with my favorite hymn, sung with gusto, I hope, which is number 11, I think, Calon Lan. Or is it 13? It's number 11. Thank you.
To
Much better. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and teach you before the end of the year to sing that in a different way. Well, not me, but hopefully somebody who can sing. But don't forget now then, St. David's. What did he say? Do you remember? Look after or take care of the little details or the little things. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Samuel. Well done. Sit down, please, just for 1 second. Thank you, Mr. Samuel. That was just excellent, superb insight into some really good little truths and also into a past that is so valid. One of the other things that Mr. Samuel told us years ago about St. David was that he asked his monks to do the work themselves, not to get other people, not to have servants to do their work. And that's just one thing I want to take this opportunity to remind us, because that's how we approach things. Last night was a wonderful event, particularly memorable for Mrs. Robertson and myself, and I'd like to thank everybody who contributed to it. Obviously, the midget prep team on the ice and the coaches and the organisers of the whole event. It was just it really was a very special tribute. So thank you all for that. Right at the very end, I became aware that we had let ourselves down, and I don't want to put a dampener on anything, but I do want to take this opportunity to link those messages. You know, we clean up after ourselves. We don't do the McDonald's thing where we just get up and we walk away and leave it there for some other person to clean it up after us. That's not how anybody should do things, and it's definitely not how we do things at Shawnigan Lake School. So we let ourselves down last night, people, because there were a couple of volunteers who looked around and saw what was going on and just pitched in and did it. 2 or 3 people, and then some staff kids joined in, and a couple of staff members. But there were over 100, maybe 150 stag boxes and stuff and junk and garbage just left lying in the bleachers. Not the sort of stuff that we do, really, is it? So let's just, as you always do in life, just take a little lesson from that and a little reminder. You've heard about rugby here, and even if you know nothing about rugby, you know that the All Blacks are the greatest team in the world. And the All Blacks produced a book that's being used in the corporate world because of the lessons it has in it. And their code, Legacy is the name of the book, starts with their creed that they believe in. And one of the first things they talk about is practice humility, sweep the sheds. And that translates into you clean up after yourself, because you're not that good or that important that you should have other minions cleaning up after you. So let's learn from all of that and tie it into the wonderful message we had from Mr. Samuel this morning. Thank you again, Mr. Samuel. Give him a round of applause. Well done. Thank you.